I'm Stefan Baumann. Welcome to the Grand View. America's national parks through the eyes of an artist. So, what was the homework assignment this week? Sewing theme. Now, in the past, a lot of my homework assignments have been like things. You know, a glass of water or a squashed water bottle. And so I thought, well, I'll kind of change it up a little bit and let's have a theme. The theme is the same thing as any object, and we want to make sure we don't paint things. So when I say we're going to be painting a theme, which in this case is sewing, that is just the concept. Ultimately, it's still about painting a painting with good, strong compositional factors, good, strong effects of lighting, good eye magnets, good design. Overall, just a really good painting. The thing that I want you to get is that there's always something for you if you do your homework assignment. So for instance, Don came in today, and what did you say? That you were not too inspired and you just decided to get off of it and just do it?
I did hell with it last night at about 7 o'clock and actually got into it as I was doing it.
Yeah, so...
The end result wasn't that great, but I did get where I wanted to go, which was to be with my painting.
Yeah. And that's been kind of the theme for today. It seems like whenever there's something in the room, it affects several people. So Mary Ellen had the same issue. She came in, she says, "Oh, I'm so bored of painting." You know, and she wanted to be coming back to class, but she kind of almost felt like it was like something she had to do. And I said, "Why is that?" She says, "I don't know, the last painting I did, it was at least kind of fun." And so I looked at her painting, and she's painting that gray elephant with that gray background and all that. And I said, "Well, overall, I mean, you know, you're just kind of painting background." And I said, "Yeah, look at the color." I said, "It's dull, it's just gray." I said, "Yeah, I get that." I said, "I'm really bored watching you." No, well, it's true. I mean, she's just like, I don't know. Because she's not inspired, you know, not inspired.
You have to feel it.
And you feel that a lot. You know, we spend a lot of time in the studio and we just start painting kind of mindlessly, but, you know, with no idea of what you're going to do in the future with it or any concept, any vision. And that really needs to be there before you start. And so, yeah, you kind of lay the painting in because you need to lay back and kind of take a look at it. You know, you were working on your line today, and you're like, "Well, what should I do with this rock?" And I go, "I don't know. It's too early. That might not even be a rock. It might be a log later. You know, you don't know." You kind of have to start somewhere. And then, if you're not inspired to begin with, then it's not just going to happen. It's not just going to happen. You're not going to be sitting there at dinner waiting for the inspiration to strike. You know?
Now you tell us.
Yeah. You know, you got to kind of be in front of your canvas. It doesn't do any good to be driving home and be inspired. You're not in front of your canvas. You can't do anything. If anything, you become frustrated. A lot of you are really inspired after our talks, and then you go home, and then you stare at your canvas and you go, "Now what?" So, you know, and a lot of times you guys look to me and you would say, "Inspire me." Well, I try. I really try. Every week I show up. "Come on, let's get some paint on the canvas." But, you know, let's face it, sewing's kind of a boring subject. So is a smashed waters bottle, you know. It's a very traditional, sewing's very traditional.
Not if you're inspired.
But not if you're inspired. So you have to choose something to be inspired over. And that usually is the central focal point. Why is it that you wanted to paint? Now, when you study with me, you know the central focal point is the place where magic happens. It's usually where the effect happens. Something happens that causes you to go, isn't that cool? So Don, just like with Mary Ellen, I don't know if it's because you two were sitting next to each other, but Don goes, I am so non-inspired with this painting. And I go, well, yeah, it is kind of a boring painting. Do something with it. So he says, well, what? And I said, well, get some light in there. You know, put something in that has you go, wow, that's cool. Like Mary Ellen with the elephant, I said, go start painting the eye. If you start painting an elephant's eye, you can't help but find interest. It sure beats painting the background in. Painting background in is boring. You know, you're just covering canvas. You got to find that little intuitive thing. Now, a lot of artists will actually paint a painting step by step. So they paint the background, let it dry. Then they paint the foreground, let it dry. And for me, that's uninspiring. In fact, it's really hard to imagine creativity coming out when you're just literally just taking sections. And I'm amazed, some people do that really well. You know, I look at Daniel Keyes, he can literally start in a corner and do this beautiful progression of the painting all the way through. But he's painted so many paintings that he knows where he's heading. He's kind of almost leaving that inspiration for dessert. A lot of you go to an expensive restaurant to go get the dessert. You kind of look forward to it. And you gear your whole meal towards that. But when you're not inspired, that's the time to order.
Start from dessert.
Start from dessert, yeah. What would it be like if, I don't know why we have this concept that we can't start with dessert. I'd like to start with dessert, please. Can I see your dessert? And then after I have dessert, I'll decide what I want to have as an entree. I mean, isn't that be cool?
I've done it.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Yeah, and then the appetizer for dessert. How would that be? At least you would leave with something in your mouth that tastes like the meal. So in painting, though, we have to get a spark. Now, Don said once he sat down and started painting, he went through and then all of a sudden he got a challenge. There was something about what he got to, which was the cloth, I think. And all of a sudden he developed a challenge and he said to himself, how do I make it look like that? So he starts manipulating the lights and the shadows and the folds. And all of a sudden he got into it because there was a little bit of a challenge. But that would have never happened had he not just actually stepped forth and created it. Hammerstein was asked, how in the world do you get inspiration to write all of that music? How do you become inspired to write all of that music? And he says, I don't know. All I know is that if I don't show up in my room where I write, it doesn't happen. He sits in front of a piano and waits and starts Hammerstein. Rogers and Hammerstein. He says, I sit and wait. Now the old Greeks used to have the same kind of thing happen. They used to show up to work and they would wait for what they called a genius. It was like a god. And you would be working, doing your marble, and when you think of the Greeks and how awesome the work that they did, they'd be sitting there, and at some point they called their genius would show up. Their genius meaning some power, something out there, all of a sudden takes you over, like with you, with the fabric. All of a sudden, it's like someone walked in and said, let me be you for a while.
Yeah, but then it walked out the other door.
Yeah, it does. Now, it wasn't until the Renaissance era where they actually said, no, you're responsible for your genius. They put all this burden on ourselves. The pressure of being a genius all became from inside. The Greeks said, you know, it's something else. It's a god. I show up for work. If he doesn't show up, I shouldn't beat myself up. So, you know, they would just say, I showed up, genius didn't, I still get credit. And they would sit there. I'm sure those Greeks had really bad days. But I know one thing, they were constantly working. If you look at the amount of marbles and things, that incredible stuff, you wonder, it had to be genius to see what they do and to work like that all day long. Of course, they had very few distractions. If you were a stonemason, that's what you did all day long. You were a stonemason. You know, there's a reason why they had such great art. It's easy when that's all you do. But you guys, not only do you paint, but you watch television, A lot of you work. A lot of you are mothers. A lot of you have email, Facebook. Oh my God, the burden of Facebook. And then what if you're not like gathering friends and you know, oh my God, birthday cards. Oh, I've got to call my mother. I mean, back in the olden days, they didn't even have phone calls. You didn't have the guilt of not calling your mother on Mother's Day. So you just work right through Mother's Day. It didn't matter.
You live next to your mother.
You live next to your mother. Probably in the same house. So consequently, we're really distracted. So it's really hard to keep our concentration. But what Don said is really true, though. You have to be in your studio and you need to work. Now, Judy says she feels almost goaded into participating and be part of the class, and that's my job, is to goat you.
Some people need to be motivated.
Some people need to be motivated.
Be their foot in the backside.
And you know, I've mentioned this a few times on YouTube. And I said, you know, there are people that watch my YouTube stations, and they watch all of them. And then after they're through with listening to my voice, they go onto another YouTube. And they spend all day long, instead of painting, going from artist to artist to artist to artist, waiting for what? Waiting for their genius to show up. Do you really think that genius is going to show up on your YouTube video? It won't happen. You won't sit there and go, oh man, if anything, it's like porn. You know, it's like, oh, that artist was so good, I got to see another one. I got to see another one. And before you know it, the day's gone, you know? That's the problem with Google. You start Googling things, and one Google leads to another, and before you know it, you're like going, oh my God, donkeys in Spain during the festive season. Look at how they dress. You know, things that you never thought you would ever start looking up. You start looking up, and you start wasting time. We have so many distractions. You were talking about,
Does that you feel like you're accomplished something?
You've accomplished something,
Yeah,
but in the big picture, you've accomplished nothing. You haven't, you know, and you think, well, I can justify it because I'm getting knowledge. Yeah. It's always like you're being educated. I mean, we're being educated to death. You know, when you think about Caravaggio, Michelangelo, they didn't have YouTube. They weren't spending time watching people, you know, learning. And I see this a lot of times too, is that people go from workshop to workshop to workshop to workshop. I have a student that just came back from a workshop. And I looked at his work and I said, so what did you learn? And he said, well, we did this. And I said, what did you learn? What tangible thing did you learn by going to that workshop? And he said, well, you know, basically we painted. Painted what? Painted.
Maybe this is the goal of this person. Maybe he doesn't have bigger.
No, maybe, no, but I know he does. That's why they keep going to workshops. There are people that do nothing but go from workshop to workshop. Now, granted, it gives them an excuse to go different areas. So if you sit there and you, like I have a workshop in Vermont coming up in October. So you think, you know, I like to go to Vermont in October. It's an excuse. I can go there and do that. But I know people that go from Vermont to Florida to Arizona. They literally go from workshop. And then while they're in Arizona or they're in Florida, well, the problem is that while they're there, they take up 4 or 5 other workshops. And so they think going to the workshop is going to make them better.
It's entertaining.
It's entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of what you do. You know, it's kind of the thing. But if you're really after getting better at your work, the last thing you need is the distraction of how other people work. Getting all that information isn't really beneficial. Yeah.
But do you think the world needs one more painter, or it's better to be entertained?
It all depends. I don't think the world needs any more painters. Just like we don't need any more philosophers, we don't need any more. I mean, we're really saturated. But imagine you, because you're a musician, right? Now imagine a really great pianist spending his time going to all these piano camps to learn more about learning the piano. I mean, at some point they know it.
You know, if you're great, it will kind of turn into something.
What?
Greatness means something.
Greatness means something, but you're not going to find it in other people's workshops. Greatness comes when you create it.
You walk away with something, you did workshop talk.
Do you walk away with something by doing your...
Why do you have workshops?
Because I know there are people out there that want to take workshops. And they want to come and they study with me.
That's the reason why they're there then.
That's why they're there. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that they're bad. It's just like I don't think YouTube videos are bad. But if you spend your whole day doing YouTube videos, you're not getting anything done. And when we look at really great artists like Caravaggio, Michelangelo, the old Greeks, all of these old masters, they didn't have continuous workshops all the time going on and on and on. In fact, too many workshops really confuses students. It's like, at what point do you think for yourself? You're never really quiet at a workshop long enough for genius to show up.
But with the other hand, you're busy painting all the time, so you get just practice all the time. So you probably have no excuse to miss class. So you're busy working all the time.
Well, if it keeps you going and painting, yes. If the only way I can get Don to stay on painting is to come to class, and that's how he'd stay, and he's unmotivated otherwise, then it has value for him to come in. You know, that's value. And then I try to add a little extra to that. So instead of taking a lunch, I'm giving a talk. But really, you could sit at home and get everything that I give you. Everything that I have. It's good to have a little feedback, it's good to have a little community. It's also good to see how other people go about doing something. But inspiration does not come from a workshop. It doesn't come from a new location. It doesn't come from travel and watching YouTube. It doesn't come from being fed, you know. You're not going to become a great pianist by watching other people play the piano. You have to play.
Yes.
You have to play. You teach piano, right? Does it make sense for you to go and take more piano lessons?
You know, it has two sides.
What's the other side?
You know, some people, they need to go to these workshops, so they sleep less, they practice more, they find time.
Yeah,
Motivation.
that's motivation. That's motivation, and a little competition.
Yeah, you need to be
Yeah,
surrounded
be stimulated.
by the
Yes.
same people.
Yeah, but you're not getting that on YouTube if you spend all day in YouTube going and watching. There is some stimulation, there is some like aha-ness, but the thing that we want at the end is a beautiful painting. We want to be able to do that, and we don't want to be goaded into it because I request it. I want you to be inspired when you go home and you think about it and you go, oh my God, I cannot wait. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to blow everybody out of the water. That's a goal. That's like, wow. You know, there are some people that rise up to the top in some of the paintings. Not all of them. Some people do it one week, some people do it another week, and it's fun to see when people are kind of playing the game. There is a little bit of a competition in my class, you know, but that's good. But I try not to have that overpower the overall lesson. I'm always interested to see what happened. Now, you guys are not going to get the homework assignment, but I had the homework assignment 2 weeks ago that I gave my class, and it was bubble wrap. And I said, I want you to create a painting using bubble wrap. Okay? But at the end, I don't want to be aware of the bubble wrap. I want to be so amazed at the lighting effects that happen. I want to be so amazed at the composition that's created that you can't imagine the painting existing without having the bubble wrap. And a lot of my students stabbed at it. Part of it is just a curiosity to see whether or not you could. And then one student nailed it. It was like, boom. And it was a portfolio piece. You know? That's what we're striving for. And so when I give you the thing of sewing, it's like, no, it's not a very interesting, it's a very traditional subject, but it's not the most interesting conversation or painting that we could possibly have. But if it's not that, maybe it's a wine glass and a plate, or a fish on a plate, or a duck. You know, it could be anything. Great art can be created spontaneously on the spot. On the spot. That's how great art is created. Boom. It's like a genius comes in. And then once you are motivated, once something happens on your painting, and you may have to dink around with it for a while. So it's always good to go on the homework assignments early and play around with it. And there are times when I play around with something for a while till something starts to happen and you go, oh yes, thank you genius for showing up, this is great. There are other times your genius doesn't show up. So don't worry, he didn't show up. You showed up for work, you get the credit. But every once in a while, he pops into your house and pays you a visit, and you go, ah, yes, I love that. So the homework assignment this week was sewing. Ultimately, I did not want a sewing homework assignment. I wanted good eye magnets. I wanted a good composition. I wanted good focal points. I repeat this over and over and over again. There's like 5 things I keep on saying to my students. I keep drumming it in week by week by week. Why do I repeat myself over and over and over again? Because I can walk to my students almost every class and go, where's your central focal point? And they look at me and they go, and I go, yeah. Where's the transitions? Where's this? All those things that we talk about need to be reinforced, reinforced, reinforced. So that eventually when you're sitting, you automatically start putting those things into your painting over and over and over again.